G'day, fans, air conditioners, and other cool units. Welcome to another episode of Writing Corner, my vlog on my writing journey. Please like, share, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And don't forget, YouTube, you got to have full notifications or you're just going to miss out. I know. I'm crowdfunded, man. Come on. Of course, my links are all in the description below. And thank you for joining me for another episode, although lately you haven't been tuning in live, and some of you have only stayed around for a short time. Well, what can I say? Please stay longer? I don't know. I think last time we spoke of some artwork, and I got some more artwork done this week. Shout out to Artix. Don't know if you're watching, man. I hope you are. Peace out, man. I really love your work. Anyway, I think I've mentioned the review a couple of times. I'm not sure if I've shared the review before, but here we go. Zia Perez did a review of a book, gave me 5-star. Thanks, Zia. I think I've read this before. Highly imaginative, entertaining, relevant, and unconventional. Thank you. Indeed. A fantastic overture. Wonderful. And tells of the origins. Yep. Covers the good and evil in nature, positive and negative, reality of greed, downfall, compromises. Absolutely. Challenges. And cohesive narratives as the book progresses, had many laughs, endearing toddler moments, antics depicted. Yeah. If you love sci-fi, Tolkien, anime, you surely enjoy this book. Brilliance. Thank you very much, Lee. It's not the only one to give me 5 stars, but that's the recent review. Brilliant. Thank you. I think I've shared this a few times before, but actually, I don't think I've shared it here, though. I think I've already discussed it. And, of course, we have the artwork, and I think shared. I did share Cade. Yeah, I showed Cade last time. Here we go. This is Cade. His wears a more traditional kimono with the oversized sleeves, slightly bulky. This, of course, partly helps hide his body armor. And of course, he has the crown. 4, 5, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7-pointed crown. Yeah, because being an elf, you have that ambiguity. I mean, if you know anything or heard legends of the elves, actually, particularly some of the Japanese stories of the flower elves, you think you see a group of women, but you never, ever assume the gender. Of course, he has the sidearm, traditional swords, the mobile phone, of course. There's his cube. For a moment, break out. That's his cube. If you follow the series, you'll know that the Katie Cube is his MindLink interface, which enables him to access the internet, his phone, and a whole range of other things, including silent communications with his protectors, of which he has many, of course. Now, of course, pretty sure I haven't shared Sora before. This is the Empress Sora. This is in one of her many costumes, of which she has many. She has the floral, a traditional plain pink. Of course, she also has imperial robes. That's the crown. It's actually the pink diamonds. So, of course, she has the pointed teeth. She's a little bit more. She's a little older and a little bit more aggressive than Cade. So there you have it. Of course, it's halfway through the month, and I'm almost finished the new chapter. Of course, I'll wait until next month to post it, but hopefully, as I finish this chapter, I'll plot on to continue. I think it might extend it. I was going to finish at 15, the current. That's the Exotic Tales of Cade, available on my Patreon, and will be there exclusive for a while yet. Backers will get, of course, a free copy eventually sent to them via one of the a free digital copy of the entire book. Once I've finished, once it's been through the beta reads and been through the editing and updated, and unlike some people, I actually care about canon continuity and progression of the characters, all to be fit in the bow. Now, I've seen this with video game writing, particularly lately, where progression of characters, like you're introduced to a character and the sequel time jumps too far, and I think that disconnects from the character. But here's the problem: we have a long-lived race, and although I don't think I'll cover the next, I have about 1,000 years of history to cover, but I'm not going to cover it in like big, hopefully 100-year jumps. I don't know, or I don't know. Maybe it's just the video game writing, but do time jumps really affect a disconnect? I don't know. Maybe it's human characters. Maybe it's going to be hard. I don't know. I like having the conversation. I prefer live conversations. Like reaching out to my audience. I like reaching out to you guys. Geez, it occurred to me I haven't been posting this on my Patreon either. I apologize to my Patreon viewers. I know some people wanted this to actually be a patron stream. I've had trouble with patron streams, and you guys never showed up even though you asked for it, so I deleted that. I'm not gonna, and plus it cost me money. These companies are not doing really dipping enough into my pockets. I mean, but I had a good month. I actually had 100 plus sales, so that's almost $100 after tax. Almost after $100 after tax, and then of course there's the money I lose on the US to Australian dollar conversion and deposit into my bank account. But thanks, guys. Actually, by good month, I mean good week. Shit, guys. Well, 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks. I actually didn't look at last week's sales figures, but wow, I really appreciate the fact that the audience is growing. I picked up a couple of subs. Welcome new subscribers, of course. I think I already said that, didn't I? But I haven't had many of you guys ask any questions lately. Where you guys at? Well, I miss you guys. But you know what's strange? I don't think anybody's noticed, but sometimes YouTube doesn't let me have chat playback. Even though some of you have chatted, I don't get chat playback. And I'm not saying that because you chatted on Twitch or chatted on Facebook, because most of the people on Facebook message me, but instead of Twitch, instead of same thing, they just go to my Facebook and message me or message me on social media. They rarely do I see any comments on the or, and I see the comments too. Yeah, on the live chat doesn't come up all the time. It's not me. I don't know what it is. I've tried looking for the settings. Maybe there's something I don't know. If anybody out there knows what the heck I've missed. But yeah, it's really weird. I'm sorry that some pretty good, decent chats, particularly a couple of weeks ago about the Psycho Killer, which I still, I know, right? I still got to go back and do the notes and update that, but I'm finding it hard to juggle with the various. I mean, I need to do these articles to make the world building is awesome. I mean, awesome. There's a lot of things to go through in the checklist for world building, and actually, I think I need to put in description. I think I'll start adding to the description what I'm talking about after the show. Let's see. New artwork, review. We got, yeah. Oh, pardon me. And world building. Oh, I got interviewed over, and that interview will be in the description, even though it's not my channel. I got interviewed, get a few views on that. Thank you to Matt for great interview. Links already on Twitter, but I'll put it in my link tree, which I actually meant to do. Yes, I have just checked my link tree. Yeah, I haven't pressed save on that. I was still fiddling around with that before and ran out of time. But I'll get that updated soon after the show. Put that interview up there. Thank you once again. Thanks, Matt. Oh yeah, so world building. Where to start? Quite frankly, there's quite a lot of areas to start. You need the population, the demographics, the government. I'm sure some of you have checked beliefs and traditions, geography, geology, survival, education systems, all sorts of government systems. You have transport system, economy, technology, social rules and regulations. Now, Some call it beauty and bliss. All right, so we'll go through beliefs and traditions. You pretty much know what they are, right? Religions, but geography. Now, geography's got several factors. You got your main civilization. Who are their neighbors? Where's their water? Now, water and resources dictate survival. You have areas of struggles, deserts, mostly inland. Food, energy, clothing, defense, shelter, education. How do they learn? What languages they speak? Do they read and write? How do they problem solve and persuade others? Does wielding a rapier get you arrested or promoted? Actually, you may laugh, but officers used to wear a rapier, and if you weren't an officer and you wore a rapier, you could be challenged. But if you won, you could actually be promoted to the rank of an officer. Not the guy you killed. I mean, if you challenge, plus sometimes if you challenge somebody like a general, you just get your ass kicked by his bodyguards, or he just shoot you. You know, not again the rules of combat. And the noblesse, yeah, they don't fuck around and find out is often a rule of the noblesse, no matter how much chivalry you may actually want to layer onto that. Of course, communication systems, speaking, reading, writing, telepathy, wireless communications, magical communications. Does sign language exist? What language do they speak? How many languages? How prevalent is shorthand? Remember, shorthand was once a secret code amongst the Secretariat, who were actually a secret society for centuries. And passed messages and notes between nobles. It's where the shorthand comes from. Secret codes date back to the Egyptians. Now, the economy, what do they need? Do they have a barter system, currency, taxes? How interwoven is magic? Is sex a currency? Power, trades, tokens, technology. Now, you may have a Starfaring technology. That doesn't mean anything. The nobles could live in orbit while the peasants scramble for resources on the ground. What stage is technology? Is the planet crumbling? Have they achieved interstellar travel? Are they on the verge of it? Are they have they failed to progress? Social structure, power, honor, innocence distributed. The one percenters, demographics again, the demographics, the one percenters, they often go hand in hand. The longer lived accumulate greater wealth. The smarter, the better, the more structured and cooperative societies. So you can have a highly structured society, but if they're not highly cooperative or highly competitive, and highly competitive societies can rise fast and fall just as fast. Beliefs and religions. What's the ultimate reality they seek? That's a good one. Rules and regulations, morality and legal codes, beauty and bliss. This is entertainment, joy, etc. This is separate from religion and bliss, because you may have those moral codes and mythologies and all sorts of things to deal with. But I tell you what, means nothing behind closed doors to 90% of societies. And when you do a lot of research, you'll find out that there's a lot of sexual secret societies. They date back. And of course, a nice little example, and I do say example, is a recent movie, Babylon. If you want to know about behind closed doors, debauchery, it's a prime example. It's actually tame and timid compared to reality and gossip, but gossip magazines, good source. You want to create let's say you want to recreate Cleopatra. You want to know what she's like. Well, in public, she's glamour, glitz. She has all the right makeup, all the right hair, all the right fashion. She's not too fat. She's not too thin. Her boobs aren't too big. And she doesn't jiggle as she walks. And she has a wiggle in her butt, but not oversized. Should be a snacker, polite when dining, rarely finishes a meal. But behind closed doors, she'd have two naked oil bronzed men, one in the front, one in the back, and she'd be, yes, you could get the imagination, use your imagination. If you want to know about structures of power, Machiavelli, you can't beat Machiavelli for the Prince, for structures of power and influence. But that would be the two men that she would get. Now, at one point, Mark Antony and Julius Caesar refused to cross swords, but eventually they had no choice. They could not keep up the demands and the price paid for the debauchery, not only with Cleopatra, but her court. And eventually they wanted to take her and her ladies back to Rome with them. She wasn't going to have any of that. And then she started plotting Mark Antony to kill Caesar. And then when Mark Antony and then she decided for some reason to pretty much tip her hand. But she split an empire, and thus the first and third went to war, and thus they'll never, pretty much, Rome was never the same. Augustus tried, but it was all downhill. Now, of course, I bring up Babylon and Cleopatra because they're also failed projects from the very start, because there isn't that much interest in that. I would say 20 years ago, pre-Pornhub, you'd do 100 million, 200 million. It'd be a big movie. But to make it for 200 million and expect 500 to break even, this is, this is something I mentioned, because world building, when you're building a world, you're going to have greedy, you're going to have successes and failures. You're going to have the people who fall, and you're going to have a lot of failures. And sometimes your successes and failures are your heroes and villains. So now, one of the most intriguing and definitely lore-heavy worlds is the world of the Forgotten Realms, which was featured in the latest Dungeons and Dragons. Man, that has volumes of lore. Just the Harpers alone is a complete volume. Members of the Harpers, the trials and tribulations, the failures, the secret assassinations, their ongoing war with Tay. I think it's actually pronounced Tay, not Thay. I think most people say Thay, and no, the Fae is Fae. Thay is Tay. But then again, it could be the American accent. But from there, your world building, your heroes, villains, heroines, And of course, you're going to have a cast herd when you're dealing with law, and juggling a cast herd is hard. I mean, particularly these days. I mean, a movie with large casts seemed to fail, and so do books. Yet, video games and anime, large casts are successful. Particularly group combat games where you have teams and factions. So know your audience, know your genre. TVtropes.com is a good start for that. And as for world building, yeah, just like I said, just look up the world building checklist and you'll find a couple of different blogs. They all cover it. I think the world building checklist is actually, there's a couple of them for sale, different ones for sale on drive-through RPG.com. I'm not sure on Amazon. I think there's a world building book on Amazon, but sometimes an RPG is the best world building because, and they have world building tools. The big ones, anyway, do have world building tools. And you get strongholds. They're definitely strongholds is something you really were going to consider, not just, modern military bases. You want strongholds. Now, if you want to also, if you're going to do military, you want history, and most of your history and lore is going to be about battles. Now, if you may or may not know, the Game of Thrones was based originally on the War of the Roses and the English Civil War. Although there's a bit of Mary Queen's, it's not really King of the North. Sarah, is it? Ara? She was meant to be a handmaiden to Mary Queen, based on the handmaiden Mary Queen of Scots. And of course, her older sister, I forget. But Jon Snow, he's actually an insert. He's an author insert if you haven't picked that up. He's got more plot armor than a dragon has physical armor. But it's not always the case with self-inserts, but yeah. It took a little bit to realize that Martin inserted himself into Game of Thrones as Jon Snow to live out his. Just look how successful he is. Hey, man. But of course, somebody will turn around and say, "Oh, got you there, Sonny Jim. Cade's a self-insert of the author." No, Cade's guilty pleasure. I sort of, although I think when it comes to self-inserting, I think a lot of authors do it, even if they don't try to do it. But I'm saying there's a difference between haha. I mean, I haven't really given Cade plot armor. And I haven't really, I mean, it's not like somebody came up to Cade's and triple stabbed him in their heart and pretty much let him bleed out in the snow, and everybody stands around saying, "Good job, son." No, that's a self-insert when the guy wakes up. No reason whatsoever, never explained, never dealt with. But isn't it funny how sometimes the most successful series have the worst plot holes, or the worst, or they have ever decreasing quality of sequels, but nothing has ever. See, in each genre, there's always going to be a movie that climbs high and falls hard. I mean, Flash Gordon climbed high. I think Star Wars, we won't see the collapse of Star Wars until it's really a dead horse. But I mean, you think it's a dead horse now? It's got a long way to fall. Every author wishes their book gets under somebody's skin, and pretty much Star Wars had it easy. No competition. No movie critic really tore it apart. I mean, sorry. After the first cut, the 1977 cut did not have competition or critics that tore into it. But the 1976 cut, I think that's where they tore into it. And Marsha, I think, just one of the reasons why. And people went to see it because basically you had everybody say, you have to go see it. That's something we don't have a lot of these days. Social influencing is really starting to wane. Now, I still say, I know somebody's going to point to a Kardashian and say, well, you have $1 billion social influencer. Kanye West, $1 billion social influencer. Michael Jordan, a multi-billion-dollar social influencer. $8 billion on Air Jordans, I think he's made. $8 billion. Way more than Kim Kardashian on what she's made. $1 billion on her show. Chloe's made $1 billion off makeup. Sorry, 900 million on makeup and $100 million on endorsements. Let's see. There aren't that many others. Kanye West, mostly music, although clothing label made him. Well, he actually lost $1 billion on that, didn't he? But he had at one point nearly reached 2.5 billion. But that's value. Then again, what George Lucas only got, some say only $500 million in cash, the rest in Disney shares, although he also had a period where he can't sell them, and he was really pissed because they lost value and still losing value, and he can't sell them. I mean, to say George Lucas hates the mouse is an understatement. But I know it's hard, and I understand the politics of Hollywood is Tinseltown. It's all fake friends, fake platitudes, fake enthusiasm, fake it till you make it. So much fakery. Sometimes people go, oh, practical sets, and most of the sets were facades. Of course, most people never knew that. And of course, CGI is the new facade. It's going to take over. Just give it forward. Once 16K resolution comes out, you're not going to tell. Most people can't tell 4K. So when you're world building, the technological progression, that's my point. Technological progression. Is it fast? Is it slow? How far does it go? Time travel. That's something I don't like. I would hope time travel shrivels up and dies and remains, unless it's a neat bow. And I don't think Endgame is a neat bow. Sure, they show at the end they're all returning the stuff to exactly, allegedly returning it to exactly where they came from it. But I mean, the problem is it was written afterwards. It's like, it's a retcon. You can tell it's a retcon. You know it's a retcon. Stuff may not always sink in. So when you're doing a sequel, if you do something like time travel, you better avoid the time period you've already covered and go to somewhere before or so. And you got to have time travel make sense. Why can't everybody use time travel? What are the rules of time travel? What happens if somebody goes back and kills themselves, or somebody goes back in time and dies? This is why I don't like time travel. Also, there's fundamentals in physics and existence of matter, and even stuff with multiple dimensions. But of course, this is, shall we say, up to you. I'm not telling you it's an absolute rule. I'm just saying, before you consider, if you're world building, consider time travel. Does it exist? Question mark. If so, what are the rules? Magic, does it exist? If so, does it have rules? Now, I don't think I've been specific on the rules, and I've been specifically vague on it. Same with power scaling. I think I've only mentioned that magic has a power scaling. It's like, if you rush world building, it's going to fall back, and your story's going to fall back, and the world building is going to take over. And also, see, in fantasy, the world is a character. Not so much in other stories. You could get away with more in fantasy than you can in science fiction. I think hard science fiction is more popular, but I don't like hard science fiction. I'm sorry. Arthur C. Clarke. I enjoyed your work, but your more fantasy elements were more appealing to me. Same with Asimov. I find sometimes the Asimov, some of the stories in I, Robot were laborious or rushed. Like a AI robot having sex with a woman and having a scene. Because she's depressed, and the only way to save her, stop her from killing herself, although it wasn't really sort of like, wow, that's wasn't really interesting. It's like, okay, see what, and a lot of the iRobot stories don't really tie in well. I mean, it's really the main character is the corporation, and the corporation was just pretty much omniscient. The ultimate evil megacorp. No government will stand up to them. They could go to war against their opposition. Now, one of the most interesting Asimov iRobot stories, I think, what was it, Sirius? The people of Sirius, they had their own AIs and their own robots. And I think they sent a spy robot, and somehow it ended up on, I think, Mercury. And it was going insane because of the radiation. And I think that was an interesting story. But, man, the Will Smith iRobot movie just still never, ever, no. Where's the override? Where's the override? The whole point, I think the best iRobot movie is Millennial Man with Robert Williams. iRobot with Will Smith, I think, was riding the hype train when Will Smith was so hyped that he could probably put on Air Jordans and say, these are Air Smiths, and people go, hell yeah. But hype. He ain't that talented. Sometimes you look at it and it's if you take Will Smith out of Will Smith's music videos, you see far better talented dancers. You just see him go bobbing up and down. And yeah, so he's got good timing. So what if he's got good teeth? So what? I mean, he's the perfect stick creature. Not too muscly, not too big. So can play a thin guy, but big enough that he could turn around and pass himself off as a tough cop, but not a tough soldier, as we've seen. There are roles he has more roles as he tried to be more versatile. After Earth, now I'm and others, but they're not important. I'm just, and this is with world building. You're going to have rise and fall, entertainment. You want to build an actor who rises and falls. Well, there you go, Will Smith. You want to build a sports star becomes a mega salesman. You can actually do that. You have Michael Jordan. You want an actor who rose to dizzying heights and became his dark side was exposed. Jonathan Majors. Is it Jonathan Majors? You want an actress who rose to prominence using sex? Mae West. You want an evil, maniacal, blackmailing megalomaniac who can charm people with a perpetual smile while she sets people up behind the scenes to take the fall for getting them to produce bad movies for her, and pay her exorbitant production fees for the privilege. Wins an Oscar because she could hold blackmail material, pretty much blackmail diva. Just look at Oprah. Can't go past Oprah for a villain. She would be the perfect Ursula from Little Mermaid. Let's see. Kings and queens, rulers. Like I said, I think we've covered turning Trump into a supervillain. Biden, your doting old man, corrupt, incompetent. I'm trying to think of real Napoleon. You can actually, I think, on Amazon, you can get Napoleon and Alexander for free on their life stories for free on Amazon. The historical text, that is. You don't have to go far to look up much more about them, and you can turn them into a hero or a villain. Same with Longshanks. I'm trying to think. Henry VIII, hubris and debauchery. Pope, various popes. Absolutely, there's plenty of history there for corruption. I would look at the French Church in the 14th century. Lots of world building material source there that you can use, and it's amazing history. War, I would say there's two of the most detailed wars ever is World War II and the current conflict in Ukraine. I know Korea, there's like a few dozen books, like 28 or so, that detail various battles, but they're not, there isn't so much background information with that. And the Vietnam War, again, there's so much not there. A lot of books, they don't mention the 3 previous uprisings. They don't mention the various factions that were once united under the Viet Minh. They don't really go into how the various factions fell apart and fell out with each other. Doesn't really go on to the motives and motivations of the various French commanders. Most of them you barely get to know, other than their the various battles they were in, why they were there, why they never left. There are various things. Now, I think one of the biggest supervillains would be the Belgium emperor, and but that was very brief. That's a good for a quick rise and fall. Now, of course, you could look to the Chinese and some of their emperors, but a lot of their history is distorted. And again, but if you want a nation that's seen a lot of war and has a long history of war, 1,600 plus years of warfare in China, non-stop. At one point, they've had 3 revolutions and 2 wars going on at the same time, internal and external conflicts. The conquests and failed conquests and attempts at conquest. They have the most wars and the most failures at war. The most losses. They've changed borders so many times and expand, and it's the most expanded nation still in existence. No other nation has expanded greater. Its expansion is bigger than the United States. But of course, the largest expansion in history is the Mongol Empire, and also the biggest collapse was the Roman Empire. The most expensive economic collapse in history, of course, is the Great Depression, but it's not well documented. But you could get still a lot of history on that. If you want to go into economic systems, there are books that'll detail up to 26 different economic systems, from basic bartering, tribalism, various forms of communism, socialism. There's only one, but ultimately there is only one system: capitalism. Doesn't matter how you implement it. All economic systems are an implementation of capitalism. Just get Milton Friedman, just read his basic stuff. You don't really have to go detail. Like, if you really, really detail, you want to know, does the world have a currency? What is the currency? Which do empires have different currency? How do they exchange money? The money changes. Are that banking and secret societies and greed and envy and wars over greed and envy and wars over resources? And you'll get those with various history books too. But ultimately, then you've got to realize who are the people. And there, fantasy, again, fantasy is a good source of races, and far better than the so-called aliens, in my humble opinion. Some of these world builders, these alien races, they just seem to be. And yes, I know I have lizard men and that, but you know what I mean. They just have the bare basic lizard man straight out of D&D. The Greys are either straight out of folklore with goblins or ogres, depending on. You go to the Anasazi or other Native American stories, which are more out there than, say, the more traditional stories of the Cherokee, for instance. There's elves, there's dwarves and giants, crow people, skinwalkers, where bears, not werewolves. The skinwalkers, they put on the skins of animals and to become those animals. Mostly the wolf, or the wolf. There was some wolves, I think, but mostly bear. There was a badger queen, I think, in one of them, where she would wear the skin of a badger, and although she would corrupt men in the middle of the night, that's her. A badger crawling into your bed and becoming a full-grown woman to basically cause mischief and mayhem. But there's many mischief and mayhem makers there. Crow, badger. A lot of them do seem to be tricksters, which various themes. Vikings, Chinese had trickster gods, lots of them actually. Detailed religions. There aren't that many detailed religions historically, although Buddhism is well detailed with a rich history. Christianity, of course. Islam has a well detailed history, but not a. It seems to be one of those where the different sects have each pretty much can be defined as their own religion when you go really, really deep. But Judaism, again, it's contracted. It had over 11, it had 13, then 11, then 9, then 3. Now it seems to be almost one faction. Almost. It seems to be divided into just left and right political factions rather than religious factions. It's really breaking down fast. With I think something as much as a third of Jews now recognize or identify as atheists or liberal progressives, whichever is the theme of the day. Again, world building, not criticism of religions. This is just from the point of world building, that you don't want to get too detailed with putting earth religions into fiction, I think, unless you're doing a historical period piece. And then you got to be really careful because religions have all changed throughout history. Today's Catholics would be all pretty much burnt at the stake as heretics. But yeah, it just gives you an idea how even, let's take something as ultimately supposed to be a safe religion. Let's talk about a safe religion. Even them, even the, what would you call them? Not supposed to call them native religions or myth or mythology and I don't like using the pagan, because pagan is a religion and it is its own religion. But paganism or demon worship, that's its own religion. It's not necessarily the worship or some so-called pagans are very expansive, Zeus, mighty Thor, and all I'm a Lokiite and stuff like that. But no, the Viking religion did have people who worship specific gods, but they were far and few between. Most had what they call a patron, where they go, I believe in all you guys, but I'm a blacksmith, so I'm going with Thor because I need to wield my mighty hammer. And the other guy says, oh, no, man, I'm into axes. And the Scalard go, I'm a trickster. I'm a performer. I'm into Loki. So yeah, there's that, but it's not like, right, you're into Loki. I'm gonna assume you're a low down rotten thief and a backstabber. No, it wasn't always like that. So when you're world building, you're going to have multiple religions and you're going to have multiple sects and you're not going to have unity. And do you have heretics? And of course, an unsafe topic is criticizing stuff like D&D and Warhammer, and you'll get upset fandoms. I mean, I don't recommend writing for fandoms or fan fiction unless you're really good at it and you can follow their law. But they're not safe. We already have divisions growing in these established IPs, with the corporations not wanting to share royalties or wanting to take the lion's share. And writers, as we've seen with recently with writers for Disney not getting paid royalties for 20 years and only getting $1 million settlement out of what is potentially hundreds of millions of dollars in profits made off the back of these writers. That's not 3%, even should be at least 3 million. But this is the problem with fandom writing. You're either going to write fan fiction and find out that they're not going to pay you, so you rewrite the title and make your protagonist not a vampire, because you suddenly find out that they're not going to pay you for your fan fiction. Sometimes, again, it's not, you may not be the best author in the world, but because you happen to know the head, or happen to be married to the head script writer for the BBC, you get $100 million book deal. Site and $33 million for your script, even though you didn't write it. Then, of course, you have the controversy now about AI. And, of course, AI, well, let's deal with it for world building. Do you have AI? Is it allowed? Restricted? Now, again, if you really want to know, you're not going to beat Asimov, I believe, or Clark. They have the best stories on AI. But I'm not saying that you shouldn't write about it. I'm just saying don't expect to receive universal praise. Or, I mean, I write fantasy. I'm going to always be compared to Tolkien. I write about elves and a quasi-Japanese society, so I'm going to be always compared to anime. Just know if you're going to write AI, you're going to always be, or robots, you're going to be compared to Asimov. Or on the obscure side, if you're deep space exploration or massive world spanning galaxy spanning empires, rise and falls of empires, Clark did it well with his Foundation series. Although I think the Mule was an interesting twist, and the second collapse unexpected, and pretty much realizing that it's all just basically they were just following the predictions that Sheldon didn't predict the rise and fall of civilization. He just tracked historic trends and measured how long each trend took, and just wrote them into a program and just basically said, at this time, punch in this code, and he'd have a prearranged message, realizing that, each period, and just give a message about what upcoming things to expect, and they would follow it pretty much. They went from predicting the trends to the trends being followed, and the Mule proved that Sheldon wasn't a psychic or a god or even predict, because he didn't predict the Mule. And after the Mule went through the predictions and just changed everything, and society changed with it because he had the power to make change. But when his powers waned and he was killed, society collapsed and they started again pretty much from scratch. But that's how it goes. Foundation would make an excellent series, not Cleopatra. Cleopatra, her life story is more Pornhub than history. And her story, you can't tell her story in PG-13. No, you'd have to have a hard rating for telling Cleopatra's story, because she was pretty much Mae West, Madonna. Who else? Matt Hari. Jill Biden, Michelle Obama. She was, you know what? She never lived long enough to be a Hillary Clinton, but she lived 36, 39. So there's also the, let's say, controversial part of the early part of her life when she was 16 and already hyperactive. Let's stick with hyperactive, shall we? And not mention that again. But let's see. Historically came close, though the story of Marie Antoinette is actually a tragedy. She was nothing like Cleopatra. Cleopatra was proactive, whereas Marie Antoinette was a naive child who thought she was immune from the consequences of her action, and she was a child. There is historical suggestions that she went to her death at 16. She wasn't a woman. That was, again, let's just say that we shall not delve too deeply into that topic either. And again, but history and tragedies, particularly with power and corruption, let's just say history is probably history books. Just get a big rubber stamp and stamp undeniable writer on it, because you're not even getting a tenth. But yeah, if you want the most documented history, there's something like 112 books detailing the different battles individually for World War II. A great series is the Pacific Campaign in color. So the images and photos and recordings and of the Pacific War. Let's see, what else is there before I go? I suppose you're going to, for world building checklist, yeah, let's just search that. They'll give you different ones. There is a couple of sites where you can get governments and details of economic systems and structures. Again, just basically, once you basically skip and realize that all systems are capitalism, just how you implement it, and you can implement it over 26 ways, and they'll still all come back to the same thing. The more you distribute the wealth, the faster you get to the end. All systems collapse because all systems are imperfect. Of course, perfection, nirvana. Yeah, we'll end it on that. Perfection and nirvana. That's the point of religion, isn't it? To teach perfection, to try and achieve perfection. And also at the same time, you have a parasite class. And so, grifters, all sorts of things. I mean, how dark, how light, how jolly. Those are things, the joy and beauty of your society. What makes them happy? What makes it beautiful? Dark. Is it grimdark? I know. I fell out with the grimdark group long ago because, they would go. They're never happy. Just realize that if you want to go grimdark, just remember they're never happy. And of course, horror. I'm not going to touch horror. You'll always be compared to Stephen King, and my opinions is he isn't all that. But of course, everybody isn't all that, in my opinion, because let's face it, we're all witnessing the people in the decline. I think when Stephen King was at his peak, yes, I think he was really entertaining, but now we have a man in decline who's had no competition because again, the it's like the Tolkien fans. They don't want any fantasy but Tolkien. They don't want new fantasy. Science fiction fans, a lot of Star Wars fans, they don't want new science fiction. This is why we have IPs and why we have powerful IPs that have lasted so long. But we're now watching the decline of IPs, personalities, influences, all mixed into one. So it's a golden time to be an independent, I think. And I hope all you new subscribers out there and Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all on the other side. I appreciate each and every one of you. Bye for now.